Good morning, everyone. I'm Marilyn Geller, Chief Executive Officer here at the Celiac Disease Foundation. It's my pleasure to welcome you to this informational webinar designed to equip you with information about an exciting new research funding opportunity through the U.S. Department of Defense. For the first time ever, access for funding for celiac disease research has been made available through the U.S. Department of Defense Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program, peer-reviewed medical research program, known as CDMRP-PRMRP. Only 50 diseases and topic areas made the fiscal year 2023 list. We are delighted that celiac disease is one of them. This opportunity for researchers to access additional and coveted federal research dollars for celiac disease has been successfully realized after several years of work on Capitol Hill by the Celiac Disease Foundation and our committed group of patient and research advocates, including some of you enrolled in this webinar. On behalf of the celiac patient community, we would like to extend our gratitude to everyone involved in making this a reality. The CDMRP process is different from what many of us and you have experienced with NIH. One of the most important takeaways I want everyone to understand from this meeting is this. Making this year's list of diseases and topic areas is no guarantee of making next year's list. If celiac disease does not generate compelling proposals that fit the program's mandate this fiscal year, there's no assurance that celiac disease will make next year's list. That is why you've been invited to this webinar. We appreciate that there's a tight deadline for LOIs and final proposals. However, the Celiac Disease Foundation and the patient community we represent need you to submit your best possible proposals to the program this year. That will help us keep celiac disease on this small but prestigious list next fiscal year. Just a word now about today's logistics. Please note that anytime during the webinar, you may use the Q&A function to submit a question, and Dr. Dupecher will address them at the conclusion of her presentation. And now it's my pleasure to introduce Dr. Cecilia Dupecher to tell you more about this opportunity. Dr. Dupecher is the Program Manager, the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Program's U.S. Army Medical Research and Development Command. She provides strategic coordination for the execution and management of the peer-reviewed medical research program and is responsible for executing the entire program's life cycle. She joined CDMRP in 2017 as Senior Officer, providing scientific management and oversight to a portfolio of research awards focused on various infectious diseases. She holds a doctorate in microbiology and immunology from the University of Sao Paulo in Brazil. Dr. Dupecher, thank you for joining us today.
All right, well, hi, everyone. It's a pleasure to be here today talking about these funding opportunities that we have for the program. Next slide, please. I'm going to start giving you a little bit of an overview of CDMRP, the Congressionally Directed Medical Research Programs. I'm going to talk about the program cycle and review process that we have for all the programs at CDMRP and some specifics about this program. We will talk about the peer-reviewed medical research program itself, PRMRP, which is the program where you have the assigned topic area for celiac disease. I'm going to talk about the funding opportunities that are out now available for you to apply and how to apply. And I'm going to end with some additional resources and strategies for success. Next slide, please. So this is the vision and mission of our organization, and we aim to transform healthcare through innovative and impactful research. And I encourage you to take a look to really let these words sink in, innovative and impactful, because we aim to fund research that other funding organizations don't really venture to fund. And we do this by responsibly managing collaborative research that discovers, develops, and delivers healthcare solutions for the service members, veterans, and the American public. This is a very broad term, all-inclusive of several groups. So this is also very important when we are drafting our proposals to see how we can tailor this to find some military relevance also, but also making sure that these are topic areas that that address the general public. Next slide, please. So this is a little bit about the who, the what, the where, and the how we call it. It's our graph, our star graph. So we started in 1992 with one single appropriation, which was for breast cancer. And this was a result of grassroots efforts of people that went to bat for that appropriation. And it came down to MRGC to manage them, and that's how the organization started. We have steadily grown since then, up to 35 programs now. Like I mentioned, we aim to fund innovative and impactful biomedical research and research that can be conducted all around the world. We can fund industry partners, we can fund academia, and that can all be all international entities as well. How we do this, our secret sauce, right, is our two-tier review process, which involves scientists, clinicians, and consumers. And I'm going to talk in much more detail about this. Next slide, please. So this is really the highlights of CDMRP. I'll just start by saying that we do not request these funds in the presidential budget, right? Congress adds these as targeted research funds to the DoD budget. So they're added every year to the appropriation. We aim to fund high impact, innovative research that other funding organizations do not venture to fund. We are very proud to say that we avoid duplication with other funding organizations. We have a partnership with the NIH, with the VA, and we're really truly trying to target to those unfunded, unmet gaps, right? So really, we are not looking for equal proposals that were submitted to the NIH, but it's something that we will catch and overlap and then during negotiations. Funding opportunities are publicly announced and competed. This is an equal opportunity program. Unlike other funding organizations, we do not work with the performers to tailor their proposal to the program needs. We have everything listed in our funding opportunity, and this is really to maintain the transparency and level out the competition. So we are not providing any competitive advantage to a performer. We follow the National Academy of Medicine recommended model for application review. This is something that was recommended to us when the organization was stood up in 1992. We have had several other reviews after that, and it is based on our two-tier review process that I'm going to talk about later. One thing that's very important to note, we are very proud that consumers participate throughout the review process on both levels of review, on peer review and programmatic review. They have an equal vote with the scientists on those panels, and they are a true north and the foundation of our programs. We do this for the people that actually go to bat for the appropriation, and we try to make sure that the research that we fund will impact them. By the way that our appropriation works, we are annually able to adapt our program's vision and investment strategy to allow for rapid response and changing needs. So if we have new topic areas that are assigned to the program, we can easily add them to the strategy of the program. We have funding flexibility because we are appropriated yearly. That means that our funds are obligated up front. We have very limited out-year budget commitments. So once you are recommended for funding, you can be sure that you will receive the entire recommended for funding amount that was in your budget. We do not offer a continuation of funding, just like other funding organizations. These are yearly appropriations. You have to meet congressional intent. So we execute the appropriation that's given to us that year without looking at continued funds of something that was funded years previously. We do not have a pay line, unlike the NIH and other funding organizations. Our funding recommendations, they are really based on several criteria that we will talk about later that we will be evaluating that on the proposals that were that had the best scientific scores and merit on peer review. We are transparent and accountable to our stakeholders. If you go to our website, all the information is there from programmatic panel members, from previous year's peer reviewers that were part of the panel. I do encourage you to take a look at our website for all that information. And we have the lowest management costs of all funders to really truly maximize the research dollars that we can spend on our proposals. Next slide, please. So this is a list of all our FY23 appropriation of all the programs that came to CDMRP. You can see there that we have 35 programs. Highlighted there is the peer-reviewed medical program with $370 million in appropriation this year. I am the program manager for this program. Different than other programs that you can see there. The only other program that has topic areas is peer-reviewed cancer, but then we have the peer-reviewed medical research program, which has 50 topic areas. And this is a very important distinction because while other programs have a very clear congressional language, which is a little bit more prescriptive, describing the intent and where the funds to meet congressional intents, where the funds should be appropriated. For peer-reviewed medical research, we have a list of topic areas, which is our starting point to design our strategy moving forward in the cycle. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk to you a little bit about the program cycle and the review process. These are basically similar to all of CDMRP programs. I will highlight some nuances that are appropriate for PRMRP, and we will discuss with more detail things that are related to PRMRP further on in the presentation. Next slide, please. So here we have just a schematic of our program cycle, as you can see there. We're going to focus today mostly on the left side, the part that has the blue arrows. You can see there that it goes all the way from the start of the program cycle when we receive our appropriations, all the way to award negotiations and the management of our awards, right? Now, if we focus here on the left side, you will see every year we have a vision setting meeting. That's where we set the strategies, we define the funding opportunities that are going to be used to as vehicle to execute the appropriation. Only after we receive our appropriation, we are allowed to release our funding opportunities. And then we go on the cycle, which is the pre-application, screening, or invitation to submit, depending on the award mechanism. And that will take us to peer review and then programmatic review, as I mentioned. And I will talk about these in a little bit more detail. What I would like to highlight here are two things. First is that the programmatic panel, which is listed on the website. I encourage you to take a look. Each program has their own programmatic panel. They have input on all phases of the cycle, from the pre-application screening for the ones that are going to be invited to submit, from vision setting, and all the way to programmatic review. So I really encourage you to take a look at the panel members so you can see who your audience is, who is actually making their funding recommendations. The other thing that I would like to note is you can see there in the bottom arrow, the blue arrow, our program cycle. Because we can only receive the funding opportunities after we receive the appropriation, it usually will take a few months for us to get through all of these phases of our cycle, including peer review and programmatic review. So by the time you submit your proposal to us, for the time that you actually receive your funding recommendation, it can take months, up to, I would say, between it depends also on the award mechanism, but it's going to take up to 18 months for you to receive your funding recommendation. Next slide, please. So again, the goal of the peer review, of the two-tier review process, is really a partnership between peer review and programmatic review. And the goal is to not do a pay line, but to recommend for funding those proposals that have the most meritorious science across many disciplines and offer the highest promise to fulfill the programmatic goals that we set forth in our funding opportunity. Next slide, please. So now thank you. Now I'm going to talk a little bit about the first level of review, which is the peer review. As you know, I think every scientist here is familiar with this process. The proposal is evaluated based on technical merit and based on on an ideal proposal. This is a criteria-based evaluation of the entire application. We will talk about the criteria that are relevant to PRMRP later on, but all our funding opportunities, they list the criteria to which and the items to which your proposal is going to be evaluated against. So I really encourage you to start when you start drafting your proposal to us, to take a look at the criteria and make sure that you're hitting all the points, because this is what you are going to receive scores for. Okay. Our panels are comprised of scientific consumer reviewers as well. They're present in all levels of reviews. So it's important that you understand that and that you make sure to really emphasize the impact that your research is bringing to the consumers, because they, like I said, our consumers are a true north. They really have the same vote as a scientist reviewer. Because of the nature of our appropriation and the changing the fluidity of our programs and our topic areas, we do not have standing panels. Each year, we recruit expertise based on the topic areas that are assigned to the program to make sure that we meet congressional intent. Our peer review participants for previous years, for prior years, they are listed in our website. You can take a look at our website to see who participated in these panels. And we don't, like I said, we're not doing this. So you can contact the reviewers. Many of them are not going to come back the same year, but it's just as a matter of transparency. So you can see the type of researchers that are recruited as peer reviewers. And the outcome of peer review is going to be a summary statement. It's going to have a numeric value on your proposal. And the ones that have the highest scores on that are the ones that are going to be evaluated on our second level of review, which is the programmatic review. Next slide, please. So here is our second tier review. Like I said, our programmatic panel is listed on our website, PRMRP. We often change a few members of our programmatic panel each year. And this is something that each program has their own programmatic panel. Now, different than peer review, where they're just based on the proposals are evaluated individually. Here, it's a comparison among proposals, right? So we are looking basically into the adherence to the intent of the award mechanism and relative innovation and impact. Innovation and impact are really big on our proposals. We are looking for those that will actually impact the patient directly and that are really going to move the field forward. The programmatic panel is also looking into relevance to program goals, and we'll talk a little bit about that when I show you how we distribute our portfolios on PRMRP. And like I said, there is no pay line. Sometimes it's not the one that has the highest scientific score from peer review that's going to actually be recommended for funding. And this is because we are evaluating several other criteria. The programmatic reviews, it's the programmatic panel members. They are also comprised of consumers, clinicians, program staff, and a wide variety of government organizations. And we also include, depending on the expertise needed, ad hoc reviewers. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, the consumers are the foundation of CDMRP. They are our true north. They are involved in all levels of review. They are involved from stakeholder meetings, vision settings, all the way to peer review and programmatic review. So consumers, for us, they can be described as patients or survivors or family members and or caregivers of the specific diseases that we have as topic areas. And again, they serve as full voting members. So really do take a look at our panel and make sure that you are touching on all the aspects that are necessary and using appropriate language for them to understand the importance of the research that you're submitting. Next slide, please. So now I'm going to talk a little bit about the peer-reviewed medical research program, PRMRP, because this is the program that has celiac disease as a topic area. Next slide. So this is a program that was initiated in 1999 by Congress, and our congressional language is very broad, very non-prescriptive. It's to address diseases and conditions with relevance to military health. So there's a clear direction from Congress to support research of clear scientific merit that's relevant to military health, but also in specified topic areas. And that is the extent of the prescription of our congressional language, which is very different than other programs that have the needs honed down within the congressional language. So with next slide, please. Every year with our appropriation, we received a list of topic areas that can be funded with that year's appropriation. Now, many of these topic areas, they vary. This is very fluid. Every year we have new topic areas. We have topic areas that had fallen off of the program that weren't assigned to the program, and then they are returning to the program now. Like you see, there's scleroderma and tuberculosis. They weren't there in FY22, and now they're returning in FY23. And we have this year 6 new topic areas that you see there: celiac disease, eczema, the ones that are listed in blue. There is, in our congressional language, there is no specified allocation of funds for each of these topic areas. They compete among themselves. And we're looking for the ones that really best have the best scientific merit. Next slide, please. For our strategic purposes, this is a program, a strategy, we divide these topic areas in PRMRP portfolios, right? And you can see there the topic areas, they're assigned to each of their portfolios. In each of these portfolios, you will see listed in our funding opportunities, they have a set of strategic goals that are meant to direct the research that we want to receive under that portfolio. And I'll talk about this in a little bit more detail in further slides. But what's important here is, again, there is no allocated funds for each of the portfolios. And I'll talk more a little bit about the strategic goals in further slides. Next slide, please. So this year, the program has released 6 funding opportunities. You can see them there. This is just a brief snapshot. You will be asked to address one of the topic areas in one of the portfolio-specific strategic goal. So even if you have a proposal that meets the need of 2 topic areas, we are going to encourage you to select one. And the best topic area is always the one that is assigned to a portfolio that has the goal that will be most conducive for you to execute your project, right? So our 6 funding opportunities, they vary from smaller awards, which are these discovery awards, all the way to clinical trials, which are very competitive award mechanism for us. They do not have a direct cost limit. So we fund a full pipeline of research from bench to bedside. Next slide, please. Here, I'm going to talk a little bit more detail about these award mechanisms that we offer. So you can see there, we start off with a discovery award. These are smaller award mechanisms with just 200K. And we're looking here for that novel idea, that breakthrough idea, and where preliminary data is not really encouraged in this case. We're looking for something that thinks really outside of the box, and that would be able, with this small investment, to just test a hypothesis, and if positive, it will be significant improvement on the field. Then we move on to the investigator-initiated award. We have 2 options. We have a partnering PI option. That means that you would have a partnership statement with someone, and the direct cost limit would be 2 million, or you can come as an individual investigator for 1.6 million. This is similar to the R01 of the NIH, but again, we can fund from basic all the way through translational research, but we're really looking at impactful research that will really impact the field of research or patient care. Then we have our TTDAs, our Technology Therapeutic Awards. These are product-driven awards. And it's really meant, we have 2 funding levels, one for 2 million, one for 4 million, and it depends on the maturity of the product that you are aiming to develop under this award mechanism. It's really meant to bring that product development all the way to an IND. That's what we expect at the end of this award mechanism. So for these 3 award mechanisms, what's really important, and I'm going to try to explain this in detail, is that we need a letter of intent. So for all proposals submitted to CDMRP in general, it's a 2-step process. You will either need to submit a letter of intent, which is not reviewed or evaluated, it's just for administrative purposes, or you will need to submit a pre-proposal, which that will be peer-reviewed or programmatically reviewed, and then you will receive an invitation to submit or not submit. For these 3 mechanisms listed on this slide, just a letter of intent is required, but it's not optional. It is actually a requirement. You do need to submit this because it's just a 1-page. You're going to tell us to which topic area you're applying, to which portfolio, what strategic goal, and just briefly describe your research, because with that, we can start setting up our peer review panels, right? So these are usually due about 4 weeks to 5 weeks before our full application, our full proposal is due. Next slide, please. Here, I'm going to talk a little bit about the other 3 award mechanisms. We have the Focus Program Award. These are large award mechanisms. It's a total of 7.2 million. This is a team science award. So it's really meant to bring together a group of researchers that are trying to resolve to address an overarching challenge. Then we have our Clinical Trial Award. And our Clinical Trial Award, we have two options: clinical trial with planning phase, where it's just meant for you to finalize all the regulatory requirements needed for your full trial. And then after that, we will fund the trial as an option if you meet all the milestones. Or you can come in with a full trial. I would just like to emphasize here, the full IND is going to be needed. We do not, we will reject proposals that are still working on the IND if they come in via the clinical trial option, okay? For both of these award mechanisms, a pre-proposal submission is required. These are award mechanisms that are very elaborate for you to draft them and submit. We're going to request several attachments, several documents. So we really do not want the researcher to go through all that work if we do not have any intention of if that doesn't really meet our needs, right? So we ask you to submit a pre-proposal. The pre-proposal is going to be listed in our funding opportunities. What are the requirements for pre-proposal? But they're much shorter. They go from 1 to 4 pages, and that will be reviewed by our programmatic panel. And if there is an interest, you will receive a letter of invitation, okay? And then with that, you will be able to submit your full proposal. And lastly, we have the Lifestyle and Behavioral Health Intervention Award mechanism. This is a new award mechanism for the program. We really try to capture here clinical research and clinical trials that are not FDA regulated. They use a combination of scientific disciplines like behavioral health, psychology, psychometrics, and biostatistics, epidemiology. It's all that under one umbrella of this lifestyle and behavioral health intervention. For this, you do not need a pre-proposal, just a letter of intent. But as I mentioned, letter of intent is required. It's not optional. Next slide, please. So for all our proposals, you will need to have a military health statement. And really what we're looking here is if the proposed research, for you to really describe if the proposed research is relevant to healthcare needs of service members, veterans, military beneficiaries, and or American public. Keeping in mind that grantsmanship goes a long way here. And this is a very broad and inclusive term that comes also, that is released in our funding opportunities, and that it needs to be addressed. So ideas for us that we give, the program office gives in these situations would be a dual use capacity that benefits the civilian population and a need that's also related to military health. Aspects of the targeted disease and condition with direct relevance to military health. That's something that you should also take a look into and really describe in your proposal. Keeping in mind that also contribution to family readiness of service members is also a bullet under military relevance, right? So this is something, if you have a family member that has serious disease conditions, it really affects the readiness of the service members. And again, the proposals, they must address, you will need to be able to choose one topic area and one PRMRP portfolio specific strategic goal. Next slide, please. So here, what we mean by this, here's an example. When you take a look at our funding opportunities, you're going to see all our portfolios with all the goals listed there. So our goals are aligned under the continuum of care. So you're going to see foundational studies, diagnosis, prevention, treatment. And this is really meant to be a mix and match, right? These statements are broad, these goals are broad, and they're broad for a reason. We wanted to be able to use it celiac disease or also eczema, but overall we're looking at what we're trying to achieve for the autoimmune portfolio. Okay, next slide, please. So here's just a continuation of that, of the goals that we have for this autoimmune portfolio, which is where celiac disease is assigned as a topic area. And again, you can really choose whichever goal you want that is conducive to your research, but you'll also need to choose the topic area. Next slide, please. So this is just going to talk a little bit more in more depth about the peer review criteria that we have listed. So all our funding opportunities, they are going to have clearly specified how your proposal is going to be evaluated. So you can see there, during peer review, we have a list of criteria that they're listed there in decreasing order of importance under impact. And under each of these larger headers that you see there, research strategy and feasibility impact, you will have a list of bullets, which are the criteria by which your proposal is going to be evaluated. So we often say that this is a great starting point when you're writing your proposal. You can take a look if your proposal is hitting all these marks, which is how you're going to be numerically scored and evaluated, right? And another suggestion that we give to researchers is start writing your proposal and then give these criteria, give these a peer review criteria to one of your colleagues that you trust and see how well all the description that's in the project narrative is really addressing these, okay? Next slide. So after peer review, you're going to have programmatic review. And this is really the criteria that the programmatic panel will be looking at. So it's relevance to military health, the relevance to topic areas and to the strategic goals, and our program portfolio composition. Like I said, not the ones that have the best scientific score are necessarily the ones that are going to be funded, because our programmatic panel is looking at this much more comparatively and see what it is that's needed to fill gaps within our portfolio, or that we can actually that can meet the strategic goals that were set forth by our program. Like I mentioned before, our programmatic panel is listed on our website, so we do encourage you to take a look at the individuals that will be making the recommended for funding list. Next slide, please. So these slides can be distributed, and you can see there it's just a nice table, a nice summary table that indicates which mechanisms are under an LOI, which is a letter of intent, which mechanisms have to submit a pre-proposal. As you can see there, it's only the bottom two, the larger award mechanism, and the dates to submit. Next slide, please. And now I'm going to close off this with some additional tips, resources, and strategies for success. Next slide. If I could leave you with the most important tip of this webinar is really to read the announcements carefully. Our program announcements, I understand we all recognize this. They are long and lengthy, but they are long and lengthy for a reason. We do not work with investigators to tailor the proposals, so all the information, we try to put it there. And even if you're reading the program announcement and you say, okay, well, I get this. Well, I encourage you to read the next 50 pages, because there will be things in there that are very important, that are really explaining to you how your proposal is going to be evaluated, things that you will not get from a program officer that's going to, from a program officer from CDMRP that will not be able to truly handhold you on that process. Okay, we are looking at program goals, like I said, focus areas. Take a look at the required elements, eligibility, the review criteria, as I mentioned, and deadlines. This is also very important, because absent some event of nature, a hurricane, or something truly out of the ordinary, the DoD does not, under any circumstance, provide a grace period. So the deadlines are the deadlines. If you are a minute late, it is automatically withdrawn. We cannot, there's nothing that the program office can do with that. So we do encourage you to allow enough time, and many of these proposals, if it comes from academia, we're going to be submitted through the business office. So keep that in mind when you have to submit those proposals. Next slide, please. So we touched a little bit on the relevance, how that's important, especially the relevance to military health, impact and innovation. Like I said, we are a funding organization that really looks into solutions to important gaps. And I do encourage you to always clearly articulate translatability. How will this work make a difference? This is what we're looking at impact and innovation. We are a high risk, high reward organization. We are looking for novel approaches, keeping in mind that consumers will be reading this proposal as well. There are parts, when you look at the funding opportunity, there are attachments of that proposal that are going to be read by the consumers. So really make sure that you articulate the importance to that audience. Feasibility here is like research strategy and feasibility. This is not something that we really need to get into with a group of scientists, but make sure that you are touching all the criteria that is listed in the funding opportunity under research strategy and feasibility. Next slide, please. As I mentioned, planning and timelines, this is very important. Do allow yourself enough time to do that. We do not provide grace periods. And as I mentioned before, grantsmanship, it goes a long way. Keep in mind the audience that's going to be reading your proposal, the team of individuals that makes the funding recommendations. So that is all something that can be very well addressed. And as I mentioned as well, ask somebody to, a colleague that you trust to read that for you. Make sure that whatever you propose, again, because the consumers are reading this, is expressed with clarity and unburdened by jargon, right? So there's going to be, one of the attachments is a lay abstract. Make sure that it clearly articulates the importance of the work that you're going to do for an audience that is a non-scientist audience. Next slide, please. So we have tons of information available on our website. You can see the program strategic plans, booklets, and many other program-specific resources. You can search awards, previously funded awards, if you want to take a look at that. You can see our annual reports. There's a series of webinars and videos and other great resources on the CDMRP website. I encourage you to take a look at that while you're working on your proposal. Next slide. You can always sign up to our listserv. When you sign up to our listserv, you'll start receiving communications from specific programs that you decide to sign up. You can sign up for all the programs, or you can sign up to individual programs that have more relevance to your area of research. And then you will be notified when our funding opportunities are out. So this is a great way to stay in communication and up to date with whatever news we have going on at CDMRP. Next slide. And here is a list of our webinars that are available for you to watch at your leisure on our website. For the teams, you can see there's a team science funding opportunity. I encourage you to take a look at that if you plan on applying for the PRMRP FPA. This is a much more broader view because this is program agnostic, but it still provides you a very good resource if that's something that you are aiming to apply for us. There's a clinical research and clinical trial funding opportunities as well that I think is very useful if you are thinking of applying to a clinical trial.